Thank you, Katie. And indeed, I have the most perfect guests for the topic today because for the next 30 minutes, we will be focusing on technology and travel, but in particular focus on distribution within hospitality and travel. And thank you everyone for joining us virtually. And as Katie said, please make sure to tag along on the social media channels. We will make sure afterwards to also read up on what you posted, share your views and comments as well. So we extend the conversation across these 30 minutes we have available now. But as we only have the 30 minutes, let's make the most out of the time. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome remotely, first off, we have Monika Wiederhold. She's tuning in for Amadeus, and she's Executive Vice President of the Global Ecosystem Initiatives at Amadeus. So Monika, thank you so much for joining and being with us. Great to have you. And all the way from Canada, joining us remotely as well, is Sebastien Leitner, Vice President Strategic Partnerships at Cloudbeds. Sebastien, thank you for joining as well. Great to have you.
For having me.
Perfect. And from India, joining as well, thank you for tuning in, is Mandar Vaidya, CEO Europe at Oyo. Mandar, it's a pleasure to have you joining our round today. Thank you.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely. And from the Netherlands, from Amsterdam, we have Eddy Veldhuizen joining. You are Senior Director Connectivity Partnerships at Booking.com. Thank you for joining us. Great to have you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Perfect. So we look at this round. There's so many players represented in this group, and I'd like to start discussing what technology trends are actually impacting the travel distribution space at the very moment, and how it is changing how travel is both retailed and shopped, and how that also impacts the various stakeholders along the value chain, right? So Monika, you have a perfect perspective there as a B2B, B2B, B2C company representing Amadeus. What are you seeing there? Fill us in. Set the scene for our conversation.
Well, besides infrastructure topics like cloud technology, open platforms, I would like to pick one topic, and that is really the data science to the extreme. AI, machine learning, and all of this data-driven technology will shape and will enable a very different type of distribution technology, and how actually offers will reach in a very personalized and very contextualized manner the travelers. So that is the number one technology trend we see.
Right, so data-driven distribution, that's one keyword there. And you also mentioned another one is personalization. It's very interesting to get your perspective, Sebastien. Cloudbeds is a technology provider for hospitality operators, mainly focused on the leisure market. And you have usually operators with less than 1,000 rooms. So very particular segment there. What are you seeing? What trends are shaping the ecosystem where you're distributing in?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is that it's mostly the travelers that are driving and shaping technology trends, because ultimately they're the customers that need to, utilize it. When we sort of rewind the clock over the last 2 years, with many borders closed and travel restricted, our 22,000 properties that Cloudbeds powers have rediscovered a local, connected, mobile, and appreciative customer. In the US, for example, we had 2 consecutive years of the Great American Road Trip. Brazilians have discovered their beautiful beaches and mountains. From a distribution perspective, what that has done is it's created additional and new challenges. Very short booking windows. Walk-in was one of the most dominant booking stores, at least, temporarily. And many of our properties reported same-day sellouts with queues out the door because people were, anxious to get out of their apartments, anxious to get out of the cities. Top of funnel, that has created opportunities for our Cloudbeds customers as well to be creative, running radio ads, working with competitors to create road trips, and use our social media integration to engage with new and mobile audiences. It was ultimately the customer who decided whether they worked or not. And so we look at it very customer-centric.
Right. So a B2C, like a B2C driven perspective here, like really the traveler driving the developments there. And Mandar, you are representing Oyo, obviously, and it's very interesting when we look into your company structure, right? So you're not only a technology provider for alternative accommodations and home rentals. You are representing this very diverse, fragmented, maybe even traditional market still, right? So what trends are you seeing there, especially in terms of smaller operators? What trends are driving their distribution needs?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We think of ourselves as a full stack provider. So we work with homeowners and hotel owners on one end of the spectrum through the whole bit of payment gateways, channel managers, online travel agents. But then we also run our own domains and our own apps facing the customer. So we are facing 360 degrees in addition to providing the technology for it. What I would say where technology is headed is, as Sebastien mentioned, I think consumers are furthest ahead. Technology is catching up with what the consumers demand, and then homeowners and hotel owners are catching up with the technology. So on the homeowners and hotel owners front, we have a bit of an education agenda in front of the industry over the next couple of years and how they can benefit most from technology to distribute their inventory better, to put up better content so that they become most available to consumers. But on the consumer side, going back to what both Monika and Sebastien mentioned, personalization using data science so that consumers get the exact vacation home they're looking for is going to be the challenge. Just before coming on this panel, I typed vacation homes in Netherlands on Google to see what happens. 11.5 million hits. Right. How does a consumer go from that to finding one vacation home where that family wants to vacation? That is the challenge that they're looking for technology to solve on the front end. And on the back end, our vacation homes have to learn how to use technology so that they can become that one vacation home out of 11.5 million hits that the consumer ends up looking.
Right, so reducing complexity is definitely one of the objectives here. And Eddy, you have another very interesting view because you're kind of aggregating both, or all types basically, right? I mean, there's alternative accommodations on booking.com, but also hotels. So what are you seeing? And also with your expertise from the back-end perspective, more like being in charge of the connections, like as your title gives away, you're responsible for connectivity there. What's keeping you up at night in terms of technology trends impacting your space?
Yeah, so thanks. So actually what all three mentioned, I think there's one element which is key to that, which is integration, right? If the backend and the front end are not communicating with each other, then let's say the customer experience won't be there. And at the end of the day, if a customer cannot find the right place to stay or even manage his in-stay or post-stay elements, then we are actually just losing out on the opportunity we're having. So it's very important that from our perspective as well, that we are working with actually all panelists here on in a different way. But we all try to bring it together. And I think that's where my job title then comes in with regards to connectivity. I want to make sure that all these elements do work together. So whilst we are investing a lot on our own platforms, on our extranet to make it easier for our accommodation partners to work with us, we also try to do the same within the PMS, the channel manager, or any other integration we can build. So that ultimately, for the accommodation, you make it easier, right? There is so many technology out there, and as long as we are not integrating in the right way, it's very difficult to manage all these different interfaces. And I think that's where, I keep up at night, keeps me up at night, trying to figure out, let's say, how are we going to do that.
Yeah, all right. So I want to dig into later what you think we need to do there exactly. But I want to go back to one point that you mentioned, Monika, which I find is probably has a bit of opportunity in there. So you mentioned data-driven distribution, right? You say data is so important. But then one thing I'm wondering, so given the past 2 years and also current developments in our world and around us. So one thing is, and we said it today many times, one thing is certain, there is uncertainty. So historical data might not be the best source of creating to build your strategy upon. So you also mentioned in our pre-conversation that future-looking data is so important. Fill us in a bit more here. What's the implications there for the distribution strategy?
Well, historical forecasting model based on historical data and building models around it to forecast the future obviously will not work in the current context and have not worked during the last 2 years, actually. So it is a very different methodology how you can predict consumer behavior, how you can steer, how you have to react in a way, in a short-term time frame, as mentioned here, now within a day or things change so rapidly. So absolutely, it needs a change in methodology to use forward-looking data in the context of distribution and in the context of revenue management, certainly, and other topics which are really relevant for the hotel ecosystem and the distribution ecosystem.
Right, and you mentioned revenue management, and Sebastien, I hope I'm allowed to quote you. I noted down a nice statement from you from last week, and you said, COVID has killed the traditional revenue management approach. So revenue managers are not happy about that, I guess. So tell us more about that.
You can quote me. That's perfectly fine. No, I think, and double clicking on a little bit on this, our perspective is that pricing and revenue management needs to be part of distribution, right? With demand patterns shifting significantly, booking windows shrinking or expanding, you need dynamic real-time pricing and distribution to work hand in hand. And having both working together is going to become critical for success. The data needs to be fully synchronized, shared, and accessible. And I think, coming back to Eddy's comment around connectivity, we still have challenges around that. Our perspective at Cloudbeds is that having a single platform can enable, easy access to the source of truth to make, real-time decisions. I also, maybe BI is also dead in a certain extent because that's almost too late, right? You need real-time decisions to be happening. They have to happen continuously.
So real-time data.
Going back to Monika's comment around AI, changes are happening on a continuous basis, and historic data doesn't help.
Right. Yeah, and I also, I have to put it a bit back again, like the connectivity topic, because I want to go into the challenges there. But also, Monika, when you said personalization, right, and we connect that with data, give us a few examples. What opportunities are you seeing in the commerce process to personalize for our customers to just provide a better travel experience?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the offering the right offer in the right context in the right moment to increase conversion is key. Yeah? And it's really changing in the way that, first of all, it's not only selling rooms, it's really attribute-based selling, but it's also selling beyond the pure hotel context. That is what we see. I mean, really looking from a journey from a traveler perspective and creating snackable offers, including mobility, including activities, including a lot of other things around the pure room and room shopping. And of course, and I think it was mentioned before, we are driven by the traveler expectation, and the traveler expectation is an Amazon experience. I mean, really having a full Amazon experience in the context of travel. And that means that we shift away from the silotized thinking, even to a way where travel verticals would or could share data to actually improve, in the end, the traveler experience. And that is really overcoming the silos, moving towards the data sharing community. And I love the title of Eddy, kind of connectivity director. But I think absolutely it is about collaboration within the travel ecosystem, sharing data, connecting the technologies wherever you can, and having this really ecosystem approach, both in a commercial collaboration sense and in a digital connected technology sense. And for us, from Amadeus side, really what role plays technology? And I really have to say it is a key enabler to mastering the massive complexity, the transactions around the clock, around the globe, at scale, is really what drives us and will enable the seamless experiences for the travelers across the globe.
Right. Yeah, that sounds so fascinating. And we hear about this so many years already, right? Like the seamless travel experience, collaboration is key, and all these things. So, Eddy, what are the really concrete challenges we're facing in terms of data sharing, connectivity? Name the top 3 that you, if you could, you would solve tomorrow.
Well, one of the major challenges we are seeing is that there are so many different ways of communicating with each other that compare it to just speaking English to a German person, let's say that's already a challenge. In this environment, and this is probably in the entire industry, there is no such thing as real standardization. So if we want to connect and really want to make this work, then we have to start thinking about building standards or creating standards so that not only on the accommodation side, but also on what we call the connected trip, towards car rental, towards activities, all kinds of other things you can do in trip, post trip. Imagine a world where your flight is delayed and all of a sudden there goes a message out to your property where the host actually knows that you are too late. Or that the taxi already gets a notification that your flight is delayed and therefore you will be arriving half an hour later on the airport. You don't need to make that call. That can only work when you use the right, connectivity in this case, but also just based on standards. Let's say if we even look into room tables we have across the entire industry, they're all different. So I'm not even sure if I can just fill up the time just talking about 3 elements.
Okay.
Because I think that will probably take a little bit too long, but the challenge sits in the standardization and the interaction and how we actually just start to collaborating with each other, because everyone has their own ideas on how it should work, but that still means that every other partner you integrate with needs to kind of just make adjustments, and that's the complicated factor. And in this connected world, purely based on customer and traveler demands, that's where I think the biggest challenge sits. And we talk a lot about technology, and technology in itself is a means to an end, right? It's just technology can only work when it's being used. And I think that's also something we all have to realize, that you can build great stuff, but if it doesn't get used, then you're still not just getting where you want to be.
Right. So I want to shift back to you, Mandar, because one technology application that is widely used is your app, right? So the OYO app was the 3rd most downloaded travel tech app worldwide, according to Sensor Tower in 2020. So how important is to you the topic of connectivity, sharing data with other players in the market? What's your take on that, Mandar?
No, our take on that is quite simple, really. By the way, the OYO app you refer to currently only lists hotels, but we will be bringing it to vacation homes in Europe, hopefully in 2022. But the view there is really simple. I spoke earlier about, or the panel spoke about shortening timelines and being able to find the exact vacation home or hotel you're looking for. What we focused on in the app is exactly that, which is convenience. So our app takes you from opening the app to final booking in 3 clicks, and you can book a hotel within a minute and a half. And whereas we started out with trying to build an app which provides the widest range of choice, we realized very quickly that what the consumer is actually looking for is convenience and speed. And what the last 2 years have actually taught all of us as an industry is that there is no substitute for that. So we anticipate that even when COVID goes away, we think that the trend around people traveling domestically much more, people thinking of hours of driving as opposed to kilometers of flying, people thinking about what hotel or home to book for this weekend because it's forecasted to be sunny, as opposed to thinking about 3 months out. These are trends which are going to remain. And in that context, creating user interfaces and creating a backend of connectivity that can cater to these user interfaces, which take you within 2 clicks, 3 clicks, 4 clicks, throughout the discovery engine, straight to the point where you've already booked and confirmed. I think that's the challenge that lies before us as far as the consumers are concerned, because the consumers today are used to booking a taxi with 1 click, and they're used to getting a refund with 1 click as well. But when it comes to booking hotels and vacation homes, it is far away from that. So that we need to take that as the aspiration, because that's what the consumers are seeing in their daily life.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Mandar. And Sebastien, what's your take? You mentioned already a few things you observed that changed in the behavior, right, of people traveling and how they book their travels. What are you excited about looking ahead? Like, what is the opportunities you're really seeing in distribution, and what's to change? After all, like really changing the distribution strategies of players in the market.
I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second. I'm not sure I got your questions completely. Do you mind repeating?
No, I don't mind at all. So what are you excited about looking ahead in the future? What are you feeling is really changing distribution, and what are you, especially from your perspective, from who you are representing, will be changing the ecosystem you're operating in?
Sure. Look, when we think about distribution, I view distribution, and we view that as Cloudbeds as well, is to ultimately enable the entire guest journey. And that includes, some repetitive tasks that are still very manual today. I'll give you an example. I checked in last night in a hotel, and two things required me to speak to a hotel receptionist. Am I Sebastien Leitner, staying at this property, so an identity verification. And then payment processing. Receptionist asked me to put in a card into a terminal so that, lower merchant fees apply and, payment security is increased. These are things that we have solved and we can solve. And we view them at Cloudbeds as an integral part of selling and distributing and booking accommodations. If we remove some of these silos, I think we can increase efficiencies, we can automate, and we can simplify a lot of the guest journey and ultimately create a better experience. So that gets me excited. That gets me up in the morning, that gets me out of the hotel room to meet and talk to partners that are on this panel on how we can accomplish this.
Right, perfect. And Monika, also from your perspective, because you said the seamless travel experience is the objective, right? And we have to share data. So what is the responsibility of each player within the market? What is your wish list for the partners within the market? What should they do from tomorrow on, ideally, to make this a reality?
Ideally, they join our projects, for example, the Traveler-centric platform, where we try to bridge the verticals and we try to bring the possibilities, the technological possibility to the different verticals to share data and to improve the travel experience as a whole. And we heard examples about it. So what if a hotel is already notified about somebody who's booking a flight and he can already offer certain things? Or if very early in the travel process, the traveler is informed about potential activities at the destination. And all these different topics along the journey come together. But it really means that the verticals, the stakeholders need to collaborate both commercially as well as technically, sharing data. And that is nothing that will start in one day.
Right.
Also, if I would put it on my wish list, but it will be over the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years, certainly a journey where more and more parties will join.
Right. And Eddy, you're the tech guy here in charge of connectivity. Would you agree? Is this 2 years that is realistic for us to achieve that everyone joins in to that team exercise?
Well, I wish that was true. I think it's a longer journey, right? And we all should try to kind of just do this faster. But as I said in the beginning, there are still a few loopholes we need to go through, and that's just increasing the entire standards of what we have in the industry. If there's still hotels that are operating in an Excel spreadsheet to manage their reservations, right? So if that's still the case, even if you look into our entire property base, then still the vast majority is actually not using a technology partner at all,
right?
Or not even using distribution. So in that sense, there is a huge opportunity to kind of just get these companies on board, right? Just we can talk about what the customer wants, but I think there's also, as an industry, as a technology industry, there's also a huge opportunity and evangelization what needs to happen in order to get all kinds of accommodations on board with using this technology to advance the experience they would like to bring to customers. So therefore, I think if we are there in 2 years from now, that would be awesome. That would be really awesome.
Right, let's check in 2 years then. I stand to save the date.
Well, if that's the invitation for 2 years from now, just to do a check-in for how far we have come, then absolutely welcome.
Right.
Eddy, we need dreams, no? 2 years is an ambition.
All right, so give us a bit more room here, right? So Mandar, what are you excited about? I mean, you're in a very, also, I mean, all of us, we are operating in a fragmented market, right? And I mean, Amadeus probably, I think that's correct to say, you probably have the highest like diversity within your inventory. I mean, booking.com is certainly in terms of rooms, but then if I look at the players being integrated, but Mandar and also Sebastien, you are in very highly fragmented markets, right? With standalone entrepreneurs that maybe have never thought about digitization before. What's your outlook? What do you think? How long will it take you to digitize the home rental space entirely?
Well, I think one thing I'll say, going back to what Eddy and Monika said in the context of standardization and sharing data, is that we mentioned all stakeholders working together. A critical stakeholder is going to be the various governments and regulators, because we work in a GDPR environment. At the end of the day, data capture and storage is itself a sensitive topic, let alone sharing. So, for it to happen in 2 years, 3 years, even 5 years, we will all need to partner as an industry with regulators and with the government so that we protect consumer interests as well as, provide them convenience and exactly what they're looking for. But what we are actually very excited with is we think that what the pandemic has done to the world is that travel has become very precious. So in one way, one could argue that the consumer is really going to be careful about where he or she travels. But on the other hand, they're going to treasure their holidays and their vacations a whole lot more. So leisure travel, we feel, is going to become more valued by the consumer and potentially also more frequent, while business travel is also going to be more valued, but potentially less frequent. All in all, I think this is good for the hospitality and travel industry, as long as several of us have mentioned we are able to get over the unpredictability of it all and learn to live with real-time data. Then I actually think we are in for a very, very positive 2 to 5 years. And as far as our fragmented homeowners are concerned, I think right now you will find more and more homeowners who have bought their second home actually during the pandemic as they thought of potential safe vacation options. And now they are emerging to saying, I want to do something with this inventory I have, potentially rent it out. So I actually see a lot of new first-time second home owners entering the market. And these people are consumers themselves and are actually much more attuned to technology than folks who have owned their home for 30, 40, 50 years. So I actually see not just a consumer-based wave, but also a homeowner-based wave towards more digitization and adaptation of technology.
Right, perfect. So unfortunately, we're out of time, and it's interesting because we could keep on for several hours, I guess, if we would dip into the certain sub-areas of distribution. But something I take away is connectivity is key and collaboration. Data-driven distribution is a thing, and historical data will not serve us. So everyone in the audience, make sure to connect or follow Monika Wiederhold, Sebastien Leitner, Mandar, Vaidya, and Eddy Veldhuizen on LinkedIn. I'm sure they are sharing frequently insights that help you to understand the topic better. And to all of you, thank you so much for joining me for this round. It was a pleasure discussing with you, and hope to see you soon in person and not virtually anymore. It was great having you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And I'm handing back to Katie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.